The restaurant smelled like butter and reheated bread, the kind of place chosen for anniversaries and reconciliations that never quite reconciled anything. I arrived early out of habit. If I came late, it would be noted. If I came early, it would be forgotten. Both had always been safer than arriving exactly on time. My father took the seat at the head of the table. He always did, even when there wasn't really a head. Chairs slid to make room for him. My aunts leaned in. My cousins arranged themselves like an audience that had seen the show before and knew when to laugh. I chose a chair near the end. It made it easier to leave. I had already paid for this dinner. Not tonight, months ago, really. Rent that didn't get raised because I covered a shortfall. A utility bill handled quietly when my father said it was just for a week. A car repair that became an expectation. It was easier to help than to argue. It was easier to be reliable than to be respected. The menus came. Orders were placed. Wine was poured. The first jokes landed softly, warming the room. Stories retold, edited for effect. The rhythm was familiar enough that my body relaxed before my mind did. Then my father leaned back, glass in hand, and looked at me like a pause in conversation had been waiting for him. "So," he said, smiling, "tell me, what does it feel like to be a failure without a husband?" The sentence didn't fall. It settled. There was laughter. Not everyone. Not loud. The kind that spreads responsibility thin so no one feels fully accountable. Someone covered a mouth. Someone glanced at me and then away. My aunt laughed hardest, as if volume could make it harmless. I felt the old heat rise, the one that made my throat tighten and my eyes burn. The impulse to shrink arrived on time, as it always did. Smile. Deflect. Make a joke about being busy. Say someday, and let the subject move on. I noticed my hands instead. They were steady. I thought about the spreadsheet I kept open most nights. About the payments labeled temporary that never ended. About how my father never joked about my brother's marriage, even after his third separation. About how success, for me, had always been provisional, allowed only if it didn't threaten the hierarchy. The laughter faded when I didn't join it. I looked at my father. Really looked. He was comfortable, confident that the room belonged to him, that I would absorb the blow and keep the peace. He always confused peace with silence. I spoke calmly. Not loudly. Not with a smile either. "What does it feel like?" I said. "That this failure is going to stop paying your bills." The words didn't echo. They didn't need to. Silence arrived in a way laughter never does, complete, unmistakable. Someone's fork paused midair. A glass clinked. It was set down too quickly. My father's smile stayed in place for half a second too long, like a mask that hadn't been rehearsed for this angle. "What are you talking about?" he asked. Though his voice had already changed, I didn't answer right away. I let the quiet do its work. This wasn't a reveal. It was a reminder. Everyone at the table knew, in pieces, in fragments. The rent covered here. The loan bridged there. The way my father never worried when a bill arrived because he knew I would help him figure it out. "I'm talking about the support," I said. "The kind that doesn't get mentioned when jokes are made." My aunt cleared her throat. My cousin looked down at her plate. Someone said my name softly, as if it were a warning. My father straightened. "We're just joking," he said. "You don't have to be so sensitive." There it was, the pivot. The attempt to make my response the problem, not the question that provoked it. "I'm not being sensitive," I said. "I'm being clear." The waiter appeared, sensed something wrong, and disappeared again. The food arrived anyway, set down like punctuation no one knew how to read. My father laughed once, sharply. "So you're threatening us now?"
"No," I said.
"I'm informing you." The distinction mattered. Threats try to control. Information allows choice. I picked up my napkin, folded it, placed it beside my plate. A small ritual, but it steadied me. I'm not continuing financial support under public humiliation. Or private, for that matter. My father opened his mouth, closed it. He wasn't used to being addressed like this, not by me. Authority in our family had always flowed one way, buoyed by tradition and volume. It faltered when it encountered conditions. My mother spoke for the first time, her voice careful. Let's not make a scene. I'm not, I said. I'm setting a boundary. The word sounded formal in my mouth, almost borrowed. But it fit. The rest of the dinner unfolded in fragments. Apologies that weren't quite apologies. Attempts to redirect conversation. Someone asked about dessert. My father didn't look at me again, but I could feel the recalculation happening behind his eyes. When the check came, he reached for it automatically. I let him. It was a small thing, but it mattered. Outside, the night air felt cooler than it should have. My phone buzzed before I reached my car. A message from my mother. We'll talk later. I didn't respond. The days that followed were not dramatic. There were no confrontations, no grand declarations. Just absence. Requests that went unanswered. A bill forwarded to me that I sent back with a brief note, I won't be covering this. My father called once. I let it go to voicemail. He sounded confused more than angry, which surprised me. As if the ground had shifted without his permission. Family gatherings grew smaller. Invitations became cautious. When we did speak, it was clipped, polite, unfamiliar. I missed the version of us that existed before I understood the cost of my compliance. But I didn't miss the silence that had always been demanded of me. Months later, at another dinner, this time with friends, chosen family, I told the story briefly, without embellishment. Someone asked if it felt good. I thought about it. It feels honest, I said. Which is quieter. There was no victory to celebrate. Relationships don't collapse cleanly, they fray. But something essential had shifted. I no longer measured my worth by how well I absorbed disrespect. I no longer paid for my place at the table. If there is grief in that, it's manageable. It comes with room to breathe. And for the first time, that room is mine.